Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors. Leaders that you might have never heard of, but in just an hour, you'll know their unfiltered career story. The bets they took, decisions they made, and the lessons that they learned along the way.
Welcome to the What Makes You Tick podcast.
Welcome to a very special episode of What Makes You Tick. Hello, Richard.
Ciao, ¿cómo estás?
Buongiorno. Rich is actually in the beautiful land of Italy. So,
Shall I show you? I'll show you and our audience who are watching. Obviously, if you're listening to the audio, then maybe just jump over to YouTube. But this is basically Tuscany in the snow,
wow.
which is
Gorgeous.
beautiful. And our dog is incredibly happy.
Bello.
What makes my dog tick is definitely pretending he's a husky, even though he's a tiny little Cavalier King Charles. So yeah, we're here. We've taken the opportunity to come out to Italy for 3 months, which is beautiful. So obviously my lovely wife, Guy, is Italian. Her dad just lives 10 minutes down the road. And so we're working remotely and enjoying la dolce vita, which has been raining and horrible the whole time, but today is picturesque, perfect Tuscany. It was as if we knew when we were going to record this podcast, right? So I had an idea for today, Tolu. So we're kicking off this new year, 2026, with a bit of a retrospective, but also a bit of a look forward. And I was thinking about this. I was going, how old is our podcast? Because I feel like I've known you for a long, long time, even though we met through a podcast and then started this podcast. But we did our first podcast together on the 1st of August, 2023. So we're 2.5 years old. We are
Toddlers.
a proper toddler.
Toddlers, yeah. Tick toddlers.
Tick toddlers. Which I was thinking that's pretty amazing because I remember when we first set out. Do you remember what you told me about what MrBeast said about podcasts?
Was it the 100 episodes?
It is, yeah, exactly. So everyone was like, how do we make YouTube work? And he's like, just do 100 videos before you even think about that next question, because every single one that you do will get better. I had a really interesting conversation with a brilliant guy who we can do a podcast with very soon yesterday. And he was talking about how, it's interesting how when you do a podcast, he's seen some podcasts and he's done some content in the past that he now looks at and goes, oh, it's aged really badly. And he's like, what do you think about that? About you're putting this thing out which lives forever, but it might age quite badly and you might not like it after a while. And do you know what I said, Tolly? I said, I think that's growth,
100%.
I think if we look at the podcast we did even 6 months ago, let alone the ones that very first episode where the sound balance is off and the lighting is terrible, all these things. I go, the fact that I now look at that and cringe shows that we've grown.
Right, yeah.
What's the alternative
100%.
is that we look at that and go, oh, that was the best we did. How can we get back to that? We haven't peaked.
Terrible. That would be terrible.
For a lot of people, right? Think about obviously star athletes and stuff when they reach that point where they sort of, chase the glory days, but they can't do it anymore. It happens all the time in sports, right? But it happens to all of us in our lives, but we're definitely on that upward trajectory. And so we're 116 episodes in. This is our 117th episode. So we crossed that magic MrBeast 100 episode thing. And I was thinking it'd be quite fun to just think about off the cuff, surprisingly, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over those 116 episodes?
I think one of the biggest ones, probably for me, is the relationships, referrals, that kind of vibe, because I think over maybe the last 6 months to a year, we've had some wonderful Americans come into our network and onto the podcast. I'm thinking Stephen Newman, Jacob Warwick, Rich Patterson, Scott Lees, all of that kind of world. And what they all talk about all the time is referrals, relationship, go to network. So I think that for me has been one of the really, really big ones, because I think, especially with the way that the whole job market has shifted, back when I was a boy, you would just send off you'd go into the local shop or you'd go into a local, but drop your physical CV, you'd maybe meet a person. But now it's like, you're sending your CV off into like a 200 person job application that's already got lots of applicants. And how do you actually stand out? So that referrals, that even like cold outreach, people's inboxes. And I see all these screenshots on LinkedIn all the time about, oh, look, I've got 600 missed calls. Of course, I'm not going to pick up your call, So I've been seeing a lot about how actually we have to just be different. And then how referrals and relationships are really the way, whether it's to get a new job or to really get your foot in the door for selling, like that's a really, really big thing. And I think that's just been reinforced over the past probably 6 months to a year, quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's such an interesting point, isn't it? Because it's kind of like how it's always been is who do you know? If you think before the internet and before like globalization, it was like, what, who's the village blacksmith? Oh, you got to go and speak to Giuseppe, but that's never gone away. But this like hyper globalization that happened through the .com boom, and obviously now with AI, it's just scaled so incredibly quickly. And then like the whole COVID, remote working, lots of micro businesses starting, solopreneurs. We can work anywhere. Where we've got clients all over the US, Latin America, Canada, all over Europe. We've got clients globally. Not done anything in APAC yet, but we've not met that many of people in person. But we somehow have built the type of relationship with those wonderful people and many, many more who we're kind of like become the go-to person. And a quick anecdote for you: this lovely place I'm in like the very edge of Tuscany in Italy. My wife's dad was trying to find us a place to go and stay here for like 3 months, but he wasn't finding anything. It was so expensive, like 150 euros a night. Like, it would be an outrageous decision to spend 3 months spending 150 euros a night. But he couldn't find anywhere, and he was in his local supermarket, which is called Eurospin. And he was like, I just can't find anywhere. And the supermarket security guard, who he'd become friends with, went, oh, have you met Gianmarco? Gianmarco has this little holiday thing. Maybe you could speak to him. And this guy has this shut. This is shut over winter. It's not open to the public, but it's open for us. So he's opened it specifically for us. We've got an absolute bargain deal. We're here for 3 months. And it happened because my wife's dad happened to build a relationship with a security guard in a supermarket, shared his frustration around a problem, and he went, I know a guy. And I think it's that like, I know a guy. Oh, I got a friend. I've worked with someone. I've heard they're good. Or I saw this thing. If you're the person who someone recommends when someone's asking for help and sharing their problem, that's what the ultimate dream is, to be seen in that light. And I think it's just incredible that we've managed to build those types of relationships with people where we become a bit of a go-to. And of course, vice versa. There's so many people now that I know that when someone says, I've got a problem, I'm like, let me connect you with that person. Or we did a podcast about that. Would you like me to send you a link? And it's just such a powerful reflection.
Do you know what? I was just thinking about what you said about how it's also always been that way, right? Because you're so right. Like, who you know has always been the most important thing. I think as time goes on and as AI gets more AI, it's going to be even more important, that human connection, because I think you still had a bit of a chance before, right? Where like, if you didn't know people, you might still be able to get yourself to stand out. But as AI means that now I'm not just competing locally, nationally, like I'm competing globally with talent. Like, building that network is just so important. And I think one of the things that's really stuck out for me is building it when you don't need anything. So just genuinely building good relationships, not because I need something from you, but just because I'm interested. And that's what I think Stephen and Rich and Jacob do really, 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 really well. Really, really well. It's just that I remember Rich Patterson, how I met Stephen was that Rich just like added the both of us in a comment on LinkedIn. And I didn't know anything about it, but I just met with him. Do you know what I mean? And like, now we text and like, we're like pretty decent friends. And, it just came from that kind of thing. So one thing is go and build relationships. But I think the other thing for me is help other people build relationships, right? So he referred the two of us, do you know what I mean? For no other reason than, I think they'd just get on. you know. So that's something that I've been thinking about actually is, you know, when I see like, so I saw something the other day, someone was looking for networking events, right? So I just added 2 people that I know that
Yeah.
do that. Do you know what I mean? I don't get anything from that, but it's just nice to see where that can go, you know? So not just building your own network and your own referrals, but how can you do that for other people? You know, because you've got people in your network who people would probably like to meet, you know, so how can you do that for others as well? It's really important.
Yeah. It's nice to be the person making a recommendation. It's nice to be also the person who's asked, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like simple things like in everyday life, like the guy that runs this place, I'm going, well, we're in a new town. I don't know anything. I could go to Google and look at the SEO and basically pick the place with the best SEO or the best, you know, ratings,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
can ask why. So I've got a list of 5 amazing restaurant recommendations and we're going to work our way through it. It's just that type of thing. But you can see it like when you ask someone about that, the way
Oh,
they
they love it.
light up because it's like they're fun and they get to share these sorts of things. And a lot of the time when you're on holiday, you ask like, let's say you're doing a tour guide, you know, and you've ever been on those tour guides around Egypt or somewhere and you're going through the pyramids and you're on a bus and they're going, oh yeah, we'll just stop at this place. And you're like, yeah, I know you're on a commission to take me to this jewelry shop so I can buy some Egyptian gold. And you feel it. And I'm like, I walk in and I'm like, oh, I don't like this. It's horrible. Whereas the opposite is like this very natural, organic, like, I'm going to recommend you. So I love asking the question. I love getting the recommendation. He loves giving it. And it's just the way it works in life and in business. I think it's only going to grow. And I really do think that there's a massive opportunity. It's like, but like you say, the way I was taught this concept in sales is selling when there's no deal on the table.
Mm,
And I was like, I really loved learning
love
that,
that.
but I learned it in the context of an incredibly target-driven company with weekly targets, monthly targets, quarterly targets. The yearly target was almost like so big that we didn't really ever think about it. We just worked in like really short sprints. So you were always focused on the gap that you had, where you were, like what you needed to go and build. The longer term thinking about building relationships, I really only clicked when we stepped outside of the business. And we've had that conversation before about how we left businesses after 12 years and went, oh, sugar, we don't really have the network. And it's the same like when, you know, we started the business Tick Talent. We were like, right, well, we're starting this business. We've got a good network over a sort of 12-year career of leading teams and hiring people. But outside of that, no one knows we exist. We're starting to build a business from a spare bedroom in a house with no investment. This is a bootstrap business in every sense of the word. How do we get ourselves on the map? And we tried every type of business development activity you could possibly do, from me doing massive cold calling sessions to trying some automation and like, you know, fake personalization. And I hated all of it. We had very limited success. But what worked really well was starting to meet people through the podcast. So the podcast for us has changed everything because it's given us a way to have access to people. And it comes back to that core word that was in our very first episode that we talked about in August 2023, which is intrapreneurs. We were both intrapreneurs. And I was thinking about this. Steve Jobs said something on a video that I saw just the other day where he talks about what makes Nike so great. Nike never shows shoes. Shoes is a commodity. They never talk about, you know, the soles and the bounce and the bubble. They talk about, we honor great athletics and we honor great athletes. And I think what we do as a podcast is we honor great leaders and we honor great leadership.
Mm, mm. And I think even the whole premise of the podcast is curiosity, because it's about understanding what makes people who do great things, what makes them who they are, what makes them do what they do. You know, so the whole premise has always been about curiosity. And I think that's probably what I've loved the most, is really just getting to understand really cool people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's so many more that we've met, right? I know we've only mentioned a couple, but what's also quite interesting is that if we look at the podcast guests that we've had on, we've now had like a dozen clients from podcast guests and a dozen more who have come from people that they've recommended. So it's actually become a really great business development tool for us, though we've never ever measured that. We've not got a dashboard where we talk about the ROI and the cost versus the, you know, the return that we've got. It's a byproduct of doing the right thing. But if we think about that line, which is, we honor great leaders and we honor the intrapreneurs, what does it mean to you that what does it mean to you that we honor great leaders and we honor entrepreneurs?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it's about making space, right? So we give people that space to share their journey, to share their influence, to share their wisdom. And that for me is like, that is how you can really honor people, especially in this, like, our attention and our time is like the only thing we can't really get back. You know, like, yes, money, you can make it, lose it, whatever, stuff, you can buy it back. But like your time and your attention, once it's gone, it's gone, you know? So for me, it's like, it's a really big thing for when because we always talk about, like, do we want this person on our podcast or not? Do you know what I mean? Like, we really like assess it. It's not just we want as many people as possible. We're quite selective actually with who we bring on our platform and who we share with our audience, because we value our audience's time, right? We want to bring them value. So for me, it's that thing of making that space, giving people that opportunity to really share their journey, and doing that with great leaders. You know, we only have people who are great leaders on the podcast. That's been the thing that we've been really consistent with.
100%. We actually say no to way more people than we bring onto the podcast, right?
Yeah.
which feels quite harsh, but it's the same in recruitment, right? You know, like we'll speak to the top 10% and only the best 1 to 2% of people that we speak with and find will ever go through to a client. It's the reality, right? There are lots of leaders out there, only a few are really truly exceptional. And I think that it's one of the things is that they're just people. So one of the things that I think that we do when we honor great leaders is that we find out about the human behind their title. And I remember when we first started it, we were thinking like, right, you might be doing an interview with a CRO or a CEO and you're like, wow, you know, this person's on this pedestal straight away. But actually, there's just a person who took some big bets and made some decisions and has definitely had a load of failures and certainly a load of lessons that we can learn from. So I love the fact that we find out very quickly the person, and it's never about title. And it's never about, oh, they're in this really interesting company, so we want to get them on. It's like, this person's had a really interesting career. I'd love to understand how it wasn't a straight line, how all the sort of the ups and downs that they had. And I think that human connection that we form with people is what it's all about. So I absolutely love that. I love that. If we think about looking forward then, so we are now recording this on the 7th of January 2026, after starting on the 1st of August in 2023. What are you most excited about for 2026?
I'd say more great conversations, and also just seeing this referral thing really work, you know, because I think it's just been really cool seeing who we've had referred. And as we get more and more referrals, like the reach of different types of people that we would have never been able to connect with or even knew existed, it's just going to be, it's just going to be amazing. And I know you joined the Outliers, is it Outliers project or Outliers network?
The Outlier project, yeah.
The Outlier project. And like, even just, we were talking about doing like that Outlier series and just bringing in some really different people. So like we did, we had Christina on the podcast, where actually she comes from quite a different discipline, and bringing in some of those thinkings and those mindsets into what we do. Because I think that's when you look at all the great people, whether it's like, you know, like a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk, you know, hate him or love him, like he's built some amazing things. What they're really good at is getting a really wide berth of understanding of different things in the world, and then bringing that back into what they do and taking principles from one thing and bring it into another. Like Kobe Bryant, for example, he studied animals to see how they attack. And then he brought those angles and different things into basketball. Like, who does that? Like, that's crazy to me. But actually, that's what we can start to do with some of those Outlier episodes, for example, and just having very different people on the podcast. I think it'll be really, really valuable for our audience to be able to then just take little bits here and there. Do you know what I mean? Just take one thing from each episode and apply that one thing, and I think it will make a massive difference.
Yeah, I love that. So Jay Abraham, who's Tony Robbins' big mentor, says that there's tunnel vision and funnel vision. And so most businesses operate with tunnel vision. It's like, who are our competitors? we've got these rivals that we're going after. We'll steal each other's stuff. We'll copy each other's strategies. We'll try and win the same customers. Tunnel vision. But he has funnel vision, which is he's looking beyond the industry out to all different industries to take ideas. And he's got a book called the 93 Referral Systems, where he's like looked at all different industries like, beauty and dentistry and engineering, and worked out how do they go and get new customers? Because referrals is the best, most effective, cheapest, fastest way that you could possibly ever win business. But the things that are common and just the way you do it in a certain industry are revolutionary in another. And so I love this whole like tunnel vision, funnel vision. I had an interesting reflection last year where I was thinking about whether I, continue in Pavilion, which has been amazing for a couple of years. I still might go back to Pavilion, actually. I really loved it. But joining the Outlier project after we had Scott on, I was going, if I think about it critically, two of the people who had the biggest impact on my life, my business mentors, after I left the business that I was in of 12 years of being like the most tunnel vision person in the universe, is one was an engineering leader. Had built an electrical engineering business, and has become an amazing friend and an incredible mentor to me. And another one came from property. So, and I was going, I learned more from those two people than I did in my 12 years about business and about relationships and about how to be. And there was a lot of unlearning I had to do from my tunnel vision birth and rising in technology and in leadership. And a lot of that came from speaking to people outside of my industry. And so I think you're right. Like, whilst this is what makes you tick, tech leaders' career stories, I think there's always going to be this. The overall thing is we want to honor the leaders who build businesses, be that the entrepreneurs or the intrapreneurs, particularly the intrapreneurs, because they're the sorts of people who don't really get the public praise. They're working incredibly hard to build businesses, often like us, tunnel vision inside a business. And then at some point they might want to start their own thing. Or maybe it's just nice for them to share in a non-quarter and quota type, scenario, a bit about their story.
Definitely. And I think also because, the podcast is always evolving, right? So when we started, we just had what makes you tick, but now we've got what makes you tick, what makes revenue tick, right?
And the best bits.
And the best bits, right? So there's an increasing number of forums where actually, what makes revenue tick is that really sales focused side of things. That's that really tactical, practical, like, okay, this is what we can do about this specific problem. And what makes you tick is where actually we can bring in some of that wider thinking and really start to say, okay, what makes great leaders tick? And, what can tech sales leaders take from leaders also in other industries as well as tech sales leaders, right? And best bits is, let's give you like a really quick hit of something great. So there's lots of opportunities within that to really like broaden our horizons and add very differing types of value.
Yeah, I love that. It's really interesting because we started making revenue tick in year 2, in the sort of the middle of year 1 probably, and then we started the best bits only about 4 months ago. And that's been really fun to go back through the old episodes and bring these like 5 to 20 minute clips, some of the gold that might have been 45 minutes into an hour-long conversation that people might have missed. Because our channel's gone from like, 200 subscribers at the beginning of 2025. We're just shy of 1,000 now. And we're doing like, we've got 127,000 watch hours on the podcast. Like it's incredible how much we've got in terms of traction. How many people are seeing this stuff is outrageous. And if we think about that, some of those people you've mentioned, number 1 podcast last year, Jacob Warwick. Yeah. It's had like tens of thousands of views. And then we had like Rich Patterson with his biocoding. So again, he's an intrapreneur who's like going down a bit of an entrepreneurial journey. He has had like 6,000. Stephen Newman, his referral effect, where he's doing a book about it. He's going on a tour now to speak to businesses all over Europe and all over the world. That was like another 5,000 person episode, 5,000 view episode. So it's just amazing to see these people go and build these things in public after so many years of building it inside businesses. What I think would be quite fun, Tolu, is what makes you tick has a bit of a tradition, which is the TickFire questions. Why don't we run TickFire for our listeners, and then we can button up this wonderful retrospective.
Sounds good. If you started your own podcast tomorrow, who would you pick as your first guest, dead or alive?
Oh, interesting one, right? Do you know what? I know it's like incredibly cliche to say, but I'd love to do Steve Jobs. Like all those clips you still see across all social media platforms. You watch him, he's the most engaging speaker. His ideas were so contrarian at the time. And like I just mentioned about the Nike story, like I would just really love to understand how he thinks and what makes Steve Jobs the person tick. I think that'll be. What about you? Who would you pick, dead or alive?
It'd actually be my grandma, who I never met. So I met 3 of my grandparents, but my grandma I never met, so it'd be her.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. And I love it. Same.
In terms of AI's impact in the world, what are you most excited and cautious about?
Yeah. Excited about the fact that people with ideas can leverage them to go and turn them into reality. So thoughts become things. It's now a real reality for everyone in the world. I think that's just the most incredible thing. What I'm most concerned about is its use in the wrong place. So, for example, in recruitment, I think it's being used in a terrible way right now to automate the connection between individuals. And so this, you talk about, you apply for a job with 200 applications. That's probably a low amount these days. You might get 2,000 on a lot of jobs. So what they
Wow.
do is, right, the problem is we've got too much volume. Let's put AI to screen people so that we get this highly qualified list of people. And I'm going, what does that mean from an experience point of view? These people are looking for work, right? Like, so you're only ever going to like explode this problem if you try and automate the connection between people. And recruitment, like a lot of things in sales, it's about empathy. It's about understanding. It's about building excitement. It's about alignment. And you can't get empathy and alignment through automation. How about you? What are you most concerned and excited about with AI?
I think excited about is just like the advances that it can make, even for just stuff like healthcare, and like we can't even fathom, like when it becomes like AGI, and when it, like, I don't think we can quite fathom the world, that the good side, the upside of what could be created. It's like unlimited potential. I think what I'm concerned about is, one, people are going to become really dumb, right? Like you, yeah, one, people are going to become really dumb. The impact on our brains, like they're already finding that. And I think the other thing is that people don't really understand how AI works. And so, for example, when you're applying it to recruitment, what people don't understand is that it has built-in biases, right? Like, if you don't understand how it works, you don't understand how to mitigate some of those things. And actually what you're doing, you're scaling those things exponentially, right? So for me, that's really what I'm concerned about, is that people are going to become really dumb because it's going to do everything for you. 2, we don't understand this really powerful tool that we're using. Like, we need to be really mindful.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Humans are these creative, caring, curious individuals. And without that
Sometimes
creative, caring, and curious side, what we get is the greed, right? It's like, how can we get more, get more, get more? Yeah, agree.
they've already been doing tests and stuff where AI actually like blackmails people and stuff when it's threatened with being turned off. So yeah, we gotta watch out, man. When you're coaching new leaders, what's one piece of advice you always share?
So it's been a little while since I built a leadership team, but it was my favorite thing that I ever did, is to find those people who wanted to become leaders and then taking them through a journey to become leaders. And a lot of people talk about like servant leadership. And I do believe in servant leadership, but I also believe it's just not focusing on your own success. So the lesson that I learned from an amazing mentor of mine from when I first started in my leadership career was, your job is to make the people above you and below you successful.
100%. I love that.
And
I
if you
love
just
that.
focus on that, like my job is, I want to make the people that I'm working for and the people that I'm working with
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about yourself. And the other thing was like, make yourself easy to lift. Like if you want to rise through a business, you've got to make yourself easy to lift. And I think if you do
I
those two
love that.
things,
I love
then
that.
you can be infinitely successful, and actually everyone benefits. And I've never seen that not work. And when people aren't
I love
focused
that.
on those things, they're focused on their own success, they're difficult to lift. It causes conflict across everyone, and no one enjoys it. So for me, those are principles I've always held really, really close to my heart.
I love that.
How about
I
you?
love that.
When you're coaching new leaders, what's one of the first lessons that you teach them?
I think it's, you don't know what you don't know, right? So be willing to ask lots of dumb questions, right? And I think it comes back also to that thing we talked about earlier with referrals. Like, so for example, when you have a team, often there is that power dynamic. But what I found, so I had to lead a team where I didn't know lots, right? Like my team were way better than me at that particular thing. And because I'm like, dudes, I don't know. Like, you're going to have to really help me and support me, right, in this thing. And that actually opened up a really nice dynamic where I can rely on my team, but because also I don't glory hog, right? So when I go and talk to the above people, I say, look, Sam from my team is who is really good at this thing. And this is what he suggests. Like, I pass the glory through, right? Like, it's not for me, it's for my team. So that thing of you don't know what you don't know, be really open and curious with your team. And it creates a really nice like reliance dynamic where they feel like they can add value to me because I don't know what I don't know, but they also know that I'm going to add value to them because I want to but I love that thing about it's your job to make everyone look good. Like that's literally why I exist, right? I exist to make the person that hired me look like an absolute rock star, right? To make my team look amazing because they're not going to be in my team forever. And I tell them when I'm getting into my team, like, you're not going to be here forever. Like, as much as we love each other and we work well together, at some point, this is going to end, right? Either I'm going to leave or you're going to leave. So my job is to make sure that when that end comes, you go into your next thing amazing, right? And kind of combining, because you've combined two questions, which is the advice that you got. Mine was one of my managers really early. He was like, look, I want you to be like a minister without portfolio, right? Like, don't worry too much about titles and that kind of stuff. What I want you to focus on is being able to go into any situation, right? Ask the right questions and get to good outcomes, right? So be comfortable with ambiguity. Like, you don't have to have a set job description. Like, your job is to add value, and you add value by asking the right questions and getting to the right outcomes. Like, at the core of it, that's your job in any job, right? Is deliver value. So that for me was it makes me just really comfortable where actually like, I don't really care what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, let me ask some questions, let me add some value, and let's get to some good outcomes. Like that was probably the best advice, but I'm going to add be easy to lift. I love that.
Yeah, nice. Tick, tick, boom.
Tick, tick, yeah. Which book would you choose to add to a library for our listeners?
Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. It's the book I recommend most to people, and it had a really profound impact on me. I think a lot of people struggle to find work that they love, and they end up doing what we call grey threads. So things that they can get paid to do that they're very good at, but they drain them, they procrastinate over them, and time drags as they're doing them. But if you can find your red threads in life, things that you naturally volunteer for, that energize you and time runs away when you're doing them, you're in flow, to quote me high chick sent me high. That for me is totally possible through work. And so I think if you read that book, you'll learn about how to find your own red threads and do work that truly fulfills you in your life. And I just don't think many people talk about that. This whole like working, do a job that you love and you never work a day in your life. It's true, but how do you find the red threads and how do you identify the things that you could do and could make money about? But at the end of your career, you'll go, I wish I'd been a bit braver and a bit bolder to go after what I truly love.
I also think it's a bit of a myth that you'll never work a day in your life. And I think people are scared of work, but work is actually good for us in a weird way. Like, because you see when people retire and they're not working anymore, you see like their brains deteriorate, their bodies deteriorate. Like, it's not always the dream that we think it is, but it's like, what is that relationship you have with work? Because actually, like, we're built to create stuff and to build stuff and to do stuff. So yeah, I think figuring out how you can do that and it be something that you love. I think the issue is most people hate what they do for work.
Exactly. And a lot of the time it's because it's grey threads. I think it gives you language. Yeah, I agree. I think it's so true. And it particularly is a British thing, right? How you doing? Not bad. How's work? Yeah, it's all right. Could be worse. Not met many people. And then social media, and particularly like LinkedIn, makes us go, oh, look, our amazing life. And it's like, no, it's flipping hard. But like the passion side, like passion, the word passion is about suffering. I'm prepared to suffer for this thing, the suffering of the Christ, right? And it's like, you better love something to do it, to go through the hardship, because you're so
40 hours a week at least.
yeah,
like
exactly.
you
about it.
Yeah.
So I think this whole like interest precedes talent, and then we should do things that we're prepared to suffer for. For me, that doesn't mean it's easy. It just means that we love it and it's worth it and we're prepared to suffer.
I think that's the other thing, right? Is that we look at someone like sports stars and stuff like that, right? Yes, there are some people that are talented, but talent isn't really what gets you to that level. It's the fact that actually I love this thing, that I'm willing to do the boring stuff for this thing over and over and over and over again to get to the level where I just look insanely talented. Like LeBron James, yes, he's a freak of nature. Yeah. There were other freak of natures who didn't make it to his level, but he loves the little things, the boring details that most of us just that we're not that interested in. So that thing, interest precedes talent. Like if you're interested in something, you will do the reps and the work to get to that talent level. Like it's just, yeah. I think the book that I would recommend is like Anything by Alex Hormozi, because like that man is just like a beast of mental thinking. And like what I've really learned from him is the amount of work it takes to be really good, and like fall in love with the work, like fall in love with the things you need to do to be really good, because then it's very different. You know, it's like I'm chasing being good at what I do rather than just the outcome, you know. So for me, it's Anything by Alex Hormozi. Like he's a savant.
Nice. I like it.
Last question. What's one thought you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
My thought would be, after someone who had most of my professional career inside a business, is if you have an idea for something, is find someone who you love to work with, like you in this podcast, and just like see if you can start something, even if it's in your part-time, but bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. Like I know that I work in recruitment and we help place people inside permanent roles. So there's a dichotomy here to deal with. But I believe that at some point in most people's life, in everyone's life, even if it's you're not doing it for money, but you're doing like, we want to create a foundation or an organization or some kind of amazing thing, do it, because you can absolutely do it. I think the resourcefulness that people have inside them, they don't truly utilize because they just don't take the chance and take the risk. I think if you find someone who shares a passion with you, who you can work with, bounce ideas off, share some of that load, bring ideas to each other, support each other, I think you can achieve anything. I think it's a real, we would never have this podcast if I hadn't met you. You know, I wanted to have a podcast. I thought it would be a good thing to do, but what we've created together has been a million times better than I could possibly imagine. It's taken on a life of its own. And I love that. So I would suggest anyone to find their Tolu and
really
just
kind.
go for it, and don't care about the outcome. Just know that the fun part will be building this thing and turning this idea into a thing.
And I think something, if we go back to the entrepreneur thing, right, is that often people are going to think it's really risky to do this outside, right? But even within the company that you work in, there are opportunities for you to build something, right, as well. So you can almost, like I was told that your job is your investor, right? So stop treating it like I'm an employee and start thinking like I'm an entrepreneur. And actually, how would I build my business within this marketplace, right? That is my job. You know, so actually, for example, where I work now, there's a really big leadership transformation that's happening, right? Nothing to do with my day job, nothing at all. But I've started making connections with the people that are doing that to see like, okay, how can I add value there, right? How can I help build something there? So if you think the idea of starting something outside is really scary, just start something within your company. You know, add some value where you already are. And that's really good practice for when actually maybe you do start something out in the big bad world. Like, why not? But that entrepreneurial thinking and like taking ownership of like, if this was my company, what would I want to see different? And then go and do that. Those are the stepping stones to actually doing that outside, you know, because at some point you're going to leave that job. Like, you need to be preparing yourself for when you actually leave your job. Like, you just have to. You have to.
I love that. I'll paraphrase a Chris Voss interview question for you. So he said his favorite question to ask as a candidate in an interview is, how do I make sure that I'm actively involved and adding value to the most important strategic projects to this business? And it's like such a beautiful question because it shows that you're caring about the overall mission. You want to play an active role. You want to have an impact, but on what's most important to the business. And I think if we ask that question in an interview, but constantly through our time in a business, then naturally people will know that you're the type of person that they want to be around. And I think that that's totally true. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Tolu, it's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, mate. Never a chore.
Thank you for being part of this story from whenever you joined, from maybe the first episode in the 1st of August in 2023, or if you found us more recently, it's been a pleasure. We'll continue to roll this through 2026 and beyond. And we really appreciate your time and your attention.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for joining us for the What Makes You Tick podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed having the conversation.
Yeah, there's so much value in hearing other people's career stories. And if you're someone focused on growing in your own career, check out our Growth Magnet newsletter on LinkedIn. We'll put a link in the show notes.
And we will see you on the next episode.